Well, you mentioned Leah Thomas. I know you said that Leah Thomas tied with Riley Gaines.
She would have got 438th if she was competing against other men.
So that's what we're talking about when we say like those opportunities are taken. And I'm sure you believe that Leah Thomas should be in there, but that's one spot that could have been given to a biological woman.
That beat Leah Thomas and Riley Gaines. So what about those women? They were cis women. They were biological women. They were not. Excuse me.
Hey, welcome back to the channel, friends. So glad you pulled up today because this one is a wild ride. Today we're sitting in on a roundtable where a group of conservative women and a panel of trans participants go head-to-head over one of the most heated questions out there right now. Who belongs in women's sports and what we actually owe to the next generation of young female athletes. It starts off respectful, but the second the numbers come out and someone gets asked to back up a viral statistic, the whole room shifts. You can feel the temperature rise. Trust me, you do not want to click away early on this one, because the strongest moment doesn't land until things really start unraveling, and there's one admission near the end that completely flips the energy of the entire conversation. Before we get into it, I genuinely love to know where you're tuning in from today, so drop your city or country down in the comments. It always makes my day to see how far this little community reaches. Alright, grab a seat, let's get into it.
Yeah, and I can respect that. I feel like there's just not enough of us. You know what I mean?
I'm a little bit I've debated this topic a lot. If you follow me and follow my platform, and I definitely want to respond to a lot of what you're saying. First of all, I would say trans women are women. They're not men. Yep. I understand what you're saying. You're probably talking about cis men and cis women. Bodies are different. I totally agree with that. I am a personal believer that trans women do not have a competitive edge. We have trans athletes like Leah Thomas who won 5th place in swimming. She didn't win 1st place. And the thing is, when it comes to trans athletes, their hormone levels have to be at a certain level to be able to participate in the 1st place. And a lot of the controversy with Leah Thomas was she tied in 5th place with Riley Gaines, who I'm not too fond of myself. And so it was this whole conversation around, can trans women have this competitive edge? Absolutely not. It goes back to the conversation that some women have higher levels of natural testosterone than some trans women. And we do not always have the competitive edge over cis athletes. There are plenty of trans athletes out there. Now, there's not enough for us to be able to compete in our own sports. So that's why it's important that trans women play with women in sports. Now, the reality of it is we don't give trans men this same slack and this same mouth like we do trans women. Right? And so my question always becomes, why is that? Why do conservative women not give trans men the same flack that they give trans women in sports? I would love to know the answer to that question.
So for me, I grew up playing sports. Water polo was my thing. And even now, like I do martial arts, right? And so even in water polo, sometimes we would have to practice with the boys. And it was humbling to see the disparity between me as an 18-year-old girl, senior year on varsity, versus a 12 to 14-year-old boy. And that's not because I sucked. That's because they're growing muscles, and there's just, when it comes down to it, you can't fight that biology. And so when I see, the argument that trans individuals should participate in women's sports specifically, and to answer your question, why are trans women targeted so much, is because trans men are not going to be winning athletic competitions against biological men, right? Biological women are the ones.
I disagree with that. Patricio, what was Patricio's last name?
It is about
He's won
900
a couple of boxing matches against cis men. Patricio Emmanuel, I think that's his last name.
But that's few and far between, right? And so when we're thinking about somebody, especially after they've gone through puberty, they have the muscle mass of a biological man, they have the lung capacity of a biological man, they have the bone density of a biological man.
Everybody's size and everybody's body chemistry is actually different. You cannot actually measure the size of somebody's heart, somebody's lungs to be able to determine.
Okay, watch how fast the goalposts move here. Right out of the gate, the activist tells us trans women do not have a competitive edge, and the proof offered is that Leah Thomas only got 5th place in swimming, not 1st. And I need you to really sit with that logic for a second, because it sounds reasonable until you actually think about it. 5th place out of how many against whom? That number means nothing without context, and you'll see in a minute exactly why context destroys this entire argument. But here's the part I actually respect, and I want to be fair. The conservative woman on this panel didn't come in with talking points. She came in with her life. She played water polo, she trained, she did the work that millions of young girls do. And she said something that hit me, that practicing with the boys was humbling. Watching the disparity between her as an 18-year-old varsity senior and a 12 to 14-year-old boy. Let that land. A senior athlete at the top of her game and a middle school kid is physically pulling ahead. And then she delivers the line that the other side has no real answer for. She says you can't fight that biology. That's not hate. That's not bigotry. That's a woman who spent her youth in the pool telling you what every female athlete already knows in their bones. And when she lays out the actual mechanics, muscle mass, lung capacity, bone density of a biological man, the response she gets is, and I'm not exaggerating, you cannot actually measure the size of somebody's heart. That is the rebuttal. We went from hard physiology to vibes in about 10 seconds.
That. There are some cis women who have a higher agility than trans women because, again, Leah Thomas only got 5th place. These trans women are not getting first place across the board. And so I just want to make sure that we're not being intellectually dishonest about people's body chemistry. It is a case-by-case basis. All trans women, all women are not made the same.
I would really love to hear the rest of what you were trying to say.
Yeah, so I just think when it comes down to it, we can say there's an outlier here and there, or there's an outlier where a transgender woman matches the hormone levels. But when we're looking at the averages of a group, a biological man is always going to beat out a biological woman. And so when we talk about, right, like feminism and everything and like giving women opportunities.
But trans women does not start with biology, it's gender identity.
Just let me finish this one point. For like feminists, I don't know if you like proclaim yourself as feminists, but I would think that a big part of feminism is giving women opportunities. A big part of a lot of girls like me and friends that I have was getting scholarships in sports to go to college. That's how a lot of my friends were even able to go and pursue a degree. And so when they're being beat out, there's like 900 instances globally where trans women
Can
have
you show
beat
those
out
resources? I don't think so. And if your feminism does not include trans women, it's very problematic. I just want you to know that.
That's what I was gonna say.
there's many instances where trans women have beat out
Please
biological
name a
women,
few.
and that's a sad
I would love to. We would love to know those resources.
Well, you mentioned Leah Thomas. I know you said that Leah Thomas tied with Riley
She would
Gaines.
have got 438th if she was competing against other men.
So that's what we're talking about when we say like those opportunities are taken, and I'm sure you believe that Leah Thomas should be in there, but that's one
so
spot
what
that
about
could
the
have
first
been
four
given to a
women that
biological
beat
woman.
Leah Thomas and Riley Gaines? So what about those women? They were cis women. They were biological women. They were not. Excuse me. Hold on. Let's not interrupt a black trans woman when she's speaking. Leah Thomas got 5th place.
But you do interrupt.
I know, to
Leah Thomas got 5th place.
devil's advocate. You guys interrupted a million times.
So
when
much
the black
more.
trans, when the only black person is on set, when the only black person's on
What
set,
does that matter?
I think that we should prioritize the black voice here.
No,
So I'm
I
just
know, I
saying.
don't agree with that. I don't
No,
agree with that.
if you
Also,
say that we're
are
all
we being
women and we're all
racist?
equal.
This is the section that should make every honest person uncomfortable, regardless of where you land politically. Because the conservative woman makes the single most important point in this whole conversation, and it's so simple it's almost frustrating. She says when you look at the averages of a group, a biological man is always going to beat out a biological woman. And you have to understand why averages matter here. Sports categories don't exist for the 1 in a million outlier. They exist to protect the entire population of female athletes. That's the whole point of the women's division. It was created precisely so women weren't competing against male physiology. And then comes the moment the activist claims there are 900 instances globally where trans women have beaten women. And the conservative side does the most basic thing anyone in a debate should ever do. They ask, can you show those resources? Twice. And what do we get? Nothing. The number just evaporates. You threw out a statistic to win a point, and when someone asks for the receipt, suddenly it's gone. That tells you everything about how confident that number actually was. But the line that ends this argument, the one I can't stop thinking about, is when she points out that Leah Thomas would have placed 438th competing against men. 438th. And jumps to 5th among women. That is the competitive edge they keep telling us doesn't exist, sitting right there in the numbers. And how does the other side respond to a devastating factual point? Not with a counterstat. The pivot is, let's not interrupt a black trans woman. When you're losing on facts and you reach for identity to shut down the question, the audience sees it. We're all equal, remember? You can't claim equality and demand a special exemption from being challenged in the same breath.
Then
I don't
why,
care.
Racist today?
then
I
why
don't
would
care
you
if
being
it's racist, but that's not fair.
black make you any different?
Yeah.
Oh, it makes me powerful. Wink, wink.
So I'll keep it short and sweet, but at the end of the day, I really believe in giving women as many opportunities as possible. And if you come from an athletic background, you know how hard young girls work all throughout their young adult lives to get to be in a Division I college athletic spot. And so when we have these opportunities torn from young women, whether it's first place or fifth place, it's a sad thing. And many of you self-proclaimed feminists, you say that you stand for uplifting women, but at the end of the day, biologically, you are male. And so that is sad that you're taking that spot, or you're advocating for taking that spot away from a biological female.
The respect. Here.
I don't think they
What
know
did I
how to
say
give
wrong?
the
No,
respect.
well, some of them
I don't
do.
think
Some of them are being respectful.
You're a trans woman, you're biologically male. Is any of that wrong? Okay.
First of
So I
all,
feel like I've been respectful.
No, again, trans women start with gender identity, not biology, because cis people, when it comes to that conversation, it's more about cis people matching with their biology. I just want us to get past that. Stop reducing trans women down to biology. This
I
makes no sense.
think
That's what
I
makes
think
the
in this
conversation so rough.
topic of conversation, when you're talking about sports, it has a lot
I
to do
think
with
you're
biology.
absolutely incorrect, and that's the thing. I could sit here and show statistics to you all day long. Leah Thomas got 5th place. She did not get 1st place. There are 4 biological women that beat Leah Thomas and Riley Gaines. So your point is minute to me. I'm sorry, but
think
please, one of y'all could go ahead and jump in there, please.
Okay, so I will say where I think you guys are gonna disagree with me on a little bit on this is where I definitely think there's a lot of sports trans women 100% can compete in that they don't have an advantage. Like I always saw conservatives getting mad about a darts competition, and it's like, why are we getting mad about a trans woman in darts? There's nothing that's gonna give her an advantage, and it was unisex. It wasn't like anything. They were mad because her opponent was a woman, a cis woman, or just for video terms, but. So, I will say, I think this debate does get silly in some points. I think it does go too far in some points. But then I will agree that there is some sports where there definitely is an advantage. Like you said with Leah Thomas, before transition, she was 400th something. And then post-transition, now she's 5th in women's. And there are women who definitely can beat her. And the problem with that is, as you said, we're going on an average sort of basis here. So we can't really let the outliers determine everything else. So I will, like I said, I think it can get a little silly when it comes to certain things, but I definitely see the point of biology mattering into some.
Here's where it all comes together, and honestly, here's where the other side accidentally proves the conservative case for them. The conservative woman lays it out plainly that biologically you are male, and it's sad that you're taking that spot or advocating for taking it. And the response is to demand that we stop reducing trans women down to biology. But you cannot say that in a conversation about sports. Sports is the one arena where biology is the entire game. We separate divisions by weight in boxing. We separate by age in youth leagues. We separate by sex in nearly every sport on earth. Not out of cruelty, but because physical reality determines fair competition. Asking us to ignore biology in athletics is like asking us to ignore gravity in a high jump. And then the conservative woman closes the trap so cleanly. She says there are 4 biological women who beat both Leah Thomas and Riley Gaines, so your point is minute. 4 actual women erased from this story who outperformed everyone, and nobody on the activist side wanted to talk about them. Those are the women feminism was supposed to protect. Those are the scholarship spots, the podium finishes, the years of training. But here's the moment that genuinely surprised me, and I have to give credit where it's due. One of the trans participants actually breaks ranks and admits it. She says she sees the point, that there are some sports where there definitely is an advantage, and that we can't let the outliers determine everything else. That is intellectual honesty. That is what this whole panel needed. Because the moment you concede that averages matter and outliers don't set the rule, you've conceded the conservative argument entirely. You can't fight biology, the receipts never showed up, and even the other side eventually admitted it out loud. Protecting women's sports was never about hating anyone. It was about keeping the one space that was built for women, actually for women. So what do you guys think of this? Leave your thoughts down in the comments, please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.